Crime, Wine, and Chaos contains adult language and graphic content. Listener discretion is advised.
I don't care what anyone says. Life is not a beach, Chaos Kids. I'm Naomi.
I'm Amber. This is Crime, Wine, and Chaos. Although, if it was a beach, you would hate it and I would love it. So, who knows?
I would hate it so much.
And I would love it. I just always want to be at the beach.
Yeah, I know you do. I know you do. I wish I could give that to you. Hi, sister. Well, you're just having a time.
It's okay. It's all right. You know what? It's okay. It's been kind of a shit holiday. Well, we're recording there. This drops way after the holiday, but it's just wrapping up for us. It's New Year's Day.
It's New Year's Day. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. And your anti-resolution, and I asked you that last year and the year before, and you told me, You asked me that last year. I don't do that.
You know what? Look at though. You're remembering now.
You're doing so good.
You're doing so good.
Thank you. Thank you. Do you even feel any kind of inclination to do like a purge or like a anything?
No.
Okay, that's good for you.
You know, the thing about it is okay, I'm going to get a little soapboxy here, but you know, the calendar that we adhere to is like what some people would call like the colonizer's calendar, right? And like the actual new year for the planet is the solstice in March. Mm-hmm. So like technically we're still just in the dead of winter. We haven't gotten to the end of the year yet.
So we should circle back to this in March.
Yeah, let's do that. Let's circle back to this in March and see how we're feeling, you know, near the end of March. How's that?
We'll put a pin in it until then.
Deal. Okay. What are you drinking today, sister?
For asking. I had this, I think, a few weeks ago. It's called Leap Year. It's a red blend from California.
It's not a leap year this year, though, just to be clear.
It's not a leap year, but it is in my little bubble right now.
You know what? I love that for you.
Thank you.
Sister, we have 3 new Chaos Kids Club members since last we recorded.
Yeah, people signed up thrice for this. Fucking thrice.
For this bullshit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Hey, you know what? I have them right here.
Tell us who it is.
I will tell you who it is. We have Selena B.
B.
Welcome to the Chaos Kids Club. We have Liv B.
I love that. Liv B.
My dear friend Liv. And Kim F., who signed up today. Thank you, Kim F. Dang. Coming in hot, right under the wire for recording today. Mm-hmm. So welcome to all of these beautiful people who have joined the Chaos Kids Club. And that also means, Chaos Kids, that we have reached another batch of 10 Patreon subscribers. And now we will be scheduling a virtual wine night for Chaos Kids Club members.
What?
Yeah, it's been a while. It took us a while.
That's okay. Slow and steady wins the race.
That's what they keep telling us.
That's right. Yep. This is a marathon, not a sprint or whatever.
Apparently.
Oh, man.
It definitely feels like one. And we're on mile like 22 at this point.
Yeah, it feels like I got a note for PE that says I could walk.
Kilometer 22? I don't know.
Don't matter none. Mm-hmm. Yep. I got a modification note for PE. I can walk. That's what this is.
You know what? I feel like I'm crawling someday. So walking is like, you might as well be running as far as I'm concerned.
God.
So welcome to all the new members. We want to let you guys know that is the only way that we make money. So if you want to support us financially, you can go sign up to be a part of the Chaos Kids Club on our patreon.com/crime, wine, and chaos.
True.
And you get a bonus episode every month. And the new episodes drop a day early every week over there.
That's true. And every 10, we have a wine night, a virtual wine night.
That's exactly right. And we hang out and shoot the shit and have a good time.
That's right.
So we'd love to have you.
Mm-hmm.
Sister,
yes.
Do you have a crime?
I sure as shit do.
I mean, I would hope so.
What if I was just like, no? What if one day I was just like, I actually don't. I'm just going to sit here.
Well, my chaos is very long, so I could still fill up a good chunk of time with it, but I was hoping you'd tell me
I
that you had
will.
a crime.
I
so-
will.
Okay, great.
I'm going to tell you about Linda Slaten. Okay. So we are going to 1974. 24-year-old Linda Slaten was a single mom. She had 2 boys, Jeff and Tim. And she had finally just freed herself from her abusive husband, who's the father of the boys, Frank Slaten.
Okay. Frank.
Fucking Frank. Big ears. Yeah.
Yeah.
They were together for 9 years, and it was a volatile marriage from the start. The boys, who are now grown men, describe their father as a violent alcoholic who hit their mom. Mm-hmm. And Linda really struggled to make ends meet. She didn't have a car, and she made her own clothes to save money.
Oh, I wish I could make my own clothes.
Samesies. I just sew my pants closed when I'm trying to hem them. That happened. I sewed them closed.
Look, I can hem my pants. I can sew a little, but like sew clothes that I would feel like good about wearing in public. That's going to be some practice still.
Yeah, I'm way beyond just some practice. So September 4th, 1981 in Lakeland, Florida. Back to Florida again.
Here we come, Florida.
Yeah. Judy Butler walked 3 doors down to her sister's house to have coffee that morning, which is something that they did regularly. Her sister, Linda.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
They called it an apartment complex, but it actually just looked like a row of like little houses in a complex.
Okay.
Yeah. How fun. 3 doors down from your sister to just go have coffee.
I mean, I would love that.
Isn't that fun?
I would love that.
Yeah. So Judy goes on down and Linda doesn't answer the door. So she turns to start walking back towards her house. And that's when she sees that one of Linda's windows had the screen popped out.
Oh,
it's like on the side of the house, and it's her sister's bedroom window.
Oh, no.
And the window was open. So Judy goes and peeks in the window, and that's when she sees her sister on the bed, partially nude, with a wire coat hanger around her neck.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So she calls the police, and it was the officers coming into the home that woke up Jeff and Tim. They were still asleep. Babies. So it was a small 2-bedroom home. 15-year-old Jeff was asleep on a cot in the living room, and 12-year-old Tim was asleep in the other bedroom. So scary.
I mean, I guess not babies, but her babies.
Yeah.
Because they're always your babies.
I know. Babies. So the officers escort the boys outside, where they are met with like several officers and news cameras, and they still have no idea what's going on.
News cameras? The news cameras are there already?
I guess so.
Jesus fucking Christ.
I can't imagine waking up like, it gives me chills to think of sleeping through that.
Through something like that?
Yes. This person walking past you and, oh God. So Tim had to go past his mom's room to get out the front door, and the door was open, and he saw his mom in there. Yeah.
I wouldn't want my kid to see.
No, that was a mistake on the investigator's part.
Big mistake. Yeah.
So Aunt Judy was the one who told the kids that their mom had been killed. I know. Jeff says that the night before she was killed, he and his mom had been in an argument. It started when he got home from school and was hungry, and there was nothing to eat in the house.
Oh.
Yeah. And he got mouthy with his mom about it and then took off on his bike. So he rode 11 miles to his grandparents' house to get something to eat.
What about his brother?
His brother stayed home. So his grandparents brought him back home around 9. And when he got home, his mom and brother were at a neighbor's house playing cards. So Linda and Tim got home around 11. And Jeff did have an opportunity to like kiss his mom goodnight that night. So the argument wasn't the last thing.
Oh, good.
So they all go to bed. So Sergeant Edgar Picken was assigned to the case, and Sergeant Picken is still alive, and he's 94 years old.
Oh, holy shit, today.
Yeah. Yeah. He's a badass.
Okay.
At the time.
Oh, it's the one. Is it the one good sergeant in Florida? Is that what you're telling me?
Yeah. Well,
okay.
At the time, this was 1974, he was considered.
I thought it was 1981.
Is it 1981? God, it is 1981. You've got a good memory.
1974 was when she left Frank.
My God. Okay, I've been binge watching Grey's Anatomy while I'm on the treadmill. And
me too. I went back to Grey's.
Lexi, they call her Lexipedia because she has like a photographic memory.
That's where I'm at because I watch it when I'm not on the treadmill. So I'm catching up to you. I'm going to pass you soon because I just got to the Lexipedia.
You just pulled a Lexipedia.
I started like a couple days ago.
Oh, God. Okay. So
anyway,
Sergeant Pickin, 94 years old. He was considered a fingerprint expert. He's put on the case, and in 1981, he was 53 and a year away from retirement. So he gets to the scene, and another detective tells him that a black man has no business looking at a naked white woman.
Oh, this sergeant is a black man. Oh. Also, just tangentially, they're saying more and more these days that fingerprints are not necessarily good evidence.
I mean, we're going to get to a point where nothing is. It seems like
well, no, because they're literally like the guy who said that fingerprints were like unique and like snowflakes or whatever, just kind of made that up, and it just became like the truth, even though no one's actually ever really confirmed that. And so
snowflakes. God, we're all snowflakes.
Anyway,
yeah.
So he's dealing with some really gross racism within his own ranks.
That's right. So he dusts for fingerprints anyway, and he's able to get a palm print off of the bedroom window.
Oh, a full
palm print where the guy obviously like hoisted himself up and out the window.
Okay.
It would take several decades to solve this, but the palm print ended up being critical in solving this case. Fuckers. So the autopsy showed that Linda had been sexually assaulted and strangled with the coat hanger. A rape kit was done, and they were able to collect semen from her body, which they did have the wherewithal to do that and save it.
Okay.
Jeff and Tim moved in with their grandparents, Clarence and Margaret. I love the name Clarence.
Right.
But they stayed in the house and didn't go out and play because they were too scared to do anything. The grandparents were also scared, and for the first several days after the murder, Grandma and the two boys slept in the same room while Grandpa stayed up all night and kept watch.
Oh,
I know. So, a few weeks after their mom's death, the boys went back to school, and this was pretty helpful. Tim especially was happy to return to football, where he had a very supportive teammates and coaches.
Okay.
Particularly Coach Joe, who even prior to his mom's death would pick Tim up and take him home from practices knowing that his mom didn't have a car. The photo of the football team and coaches was taken just 1 month after his mom's death, and he kept it hanging in his room as a reminder to keep moving forward and never give up, which was something that his mom always told him.
Was it Coach Joe? Did Coach Joe do it?
Stop ruining my story. It was chaotic. Goodbye.
Keep going.
You're terrible.
I'm sorry. Is that not...
Erin Moriarty on 48 Hours had me on the edge of my seat. So...
Look, I'm basically an FBI profiler. I don't know what to tell you.
I'm just a psychologist, so I don't...
Keep going.
Okay, so investigators want to talk to Frank, since he's a douche.
Yeah, Frank's a douchebag, also the husband or ex-husband. Yeah.
But he was at home in Alabama the night that Linda was killed.
Okay.
At the time of her death, Linda did have a boyfriend who was also looked at, but he also had a solid alibi. They talked to the friends next door where Linda was the night before playing cards, but they had no suspects. And then the police turned their attention to 15-year-old Jeff.
Her son. Yeah. They thought her son might have raped her and strangled her with a coat hanger.
Right. They would...
because they had a fight that night, like teenagers do with their parents all the fucking time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Real, crack team they've got there.
Yeah. They would show up at his school and pull him out of class to interrogate him.
Oh
Yeah.
my God.
And yeah, he was just a typical teenager who got into disagreements with his mom. But
Yeah.
the police would not let up on him. And the grandparents had to finally intervene and basically told the police to fuck off and leave him alone.
Yeah.
Then the case goes cold and decades go by. So Jeff and Tim have grown up with families of their own, and they are still like haunted by the guilt of not waking up that night and helping their mom. Mm-hmm. They refer to the man who killed their mom as the monster, and they lived in fear even into adulthood.
Right, because they didn't know who the fuck it was.
No.
This monster or whatever is out there and could show up anytime, and who knows?
It's so creepy to think of somebody walking past you while you're sleeping and going and doing. It's so creepy.
I hate
it too.
It's the home invasion ones. It's the home invasion ones. At least this one didn't involve, her waking up to a man standing over her bed with a knife like you like to do to us. I
mean, it might have. We don't know.
It's just true. It might
like
have.
You like to do to us. I'm sorry.
Look, you have a pattern. I'm just saying.
I think we're gravitated to like our thing that we feared the most.
Worst fears. Yeah.
So 20 years after the murder, a new detective takes the case and sends off the DNA samples to the crime lab. He also takes...
Oh, yeah. I mean, DNA.
DNA. DNA. God. He also takes Tim and Jeff's DNA just to clear them, just for their own peace of mind.
Okay.
Yeah. He took dozens of samples from other people of interest and submitted them to the database, but there were no matches. Then
20 years. So this is 2001. So CODIS is still not like robust.
Right. It's baby CODIS. So in September of 2001, this new detective gets a tip. About a year after Linda's murder, 24-year-old Jimmy Ulmer pulled a 10-year-old girl through her bedroom window and nearly killed her. He was convicted and sentenced to 80 years. At the time of Linda's murder, Jimmy Ulmer had been staying with a friend in the same complex where Linda lived.
Oh, and with all those little mini houses.
Jimmy Ulmer had died in prison in 1996, but the detectives were able to collect a DNA sample from his mom.
Oh.
But it was not a match.
Oh.
Yep. So several more years would go by with no matches. And then in 2015, this Detective Grice retired without ever having found Linda's killer. It's so sad. He promised the boys he wouldn't retire until he found him. And then he just got old as fuck and was like, I gotta
go.
Yeah.
Oh.
Then 3 years later, in 2019, genetic genealogy makes its debut.
Genetic genealogy for the win.
And this genetic genealogist, Cece Moore, she's a fucking badass.
I feel like I've heard her before. Like, is she like the one? I think
so.
She's like the one now. Yeah.
Yeah. So she takes Linda's case. She uploads the DNA from the rape kit to a public genealogy site called GEDmatch and starts to build a family tree. She constructs 3 genetic networks based on the DNA, which converge into one family tree. Pretty soon, she narrows it down to one family, which is a family with only one son. So brilliant. She was able to positively identify who she believed was the one suspect in just 2 days.
Wow. I got chills. That's fucking phenomenal.
Cece Moore for the win.
For the win.
And that suspect was Joseph Clinton Mills, a.k.a.
the football coach.
God, the football coach from 2 pages ago. Maybe I'm just a dum-dum. This shit has me on the edge of my seat. And then I'm like, every time it's like when we went and saw the others. I was like, Naomi, they were fucking dead this whole time. You're like, yeah.
Look, you know me. I have a mind for puzzles.
Okay, you know when you want someone to be shocked at the same time as you, though?
I do.
I'm just going to pretend and go, whenever I see you do it. I'm not going to know what's going on, but I don't want to be the slow skis over here. Oh my God. So it was Coach Joe. At this time, Coach Joe is 58 years old, living in Kathleen, Florida, which is about 30 minutes away from where Linda was killed. Mm-hmm. He's a married businessman with a cleaning service. He has kids and grandkids. At the time of the crime, he was just 20 years old.
Holy shit.
Mm-hmm. He was questioned at the time over the phone, and it was very brief.
Okay.
And he was never considered a suspect.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And the extent of that conversation was him just confirming that he did, in fact, drop Tim off at home after football practice, and there was nothing more to report.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. In the years after Linda's murder, Joseph Mills was arrested on forgery charges where he was fingerprinted and palm printed. Mm-hmm. And in 2019, that palm print was compared against that one that Sergeant Pickett lifted off of Linda's window, and it was a match.
Yep.
Yeah. But they still needed to get his DNA, so they followed him. Mm-hmm. They followed him around for a while, hoping he would discard something that they could use, but he doesn't. Okay, we've talked about this before. Do you think that as DNA progresses, that you just have to be vigilant of every single thing you're doing every single day in public? I can't spit. I can't discard a drink. Do you think that you're like...
Oh, do you think that like he got to the point later where he knew that this was happening now, that he was deliberately not leaving DNA behind?
Yeah.
Because he was paranoid that like he knew that he had left DNA behind at the murder scene?
I fucking would be. I'd be scared to do anything.
I mean, maybe.
Yeah. So eventually they go to his home and they take his trash. Mm-hmm. And they find a piece of medical tape in the trash. And they sent that off to the crime lab and it comes back as a match.
There it is.
Mm-hmm. So the brothers are told finally who the killer was. And Tim is fucking sick to his stomach. He still...
I bet.
Uh-huh. He still had that football picture up in his house. And he's standing right in front of Coach Joe. That poor guy. He's like, I had my mom's killer up in my house in a picture.
And like, here's the thing. And this is the part, well, maybe you'll tell me, but like my literal next thought is this man walked around for 30 plus years, not caught. Like, what the fuck else did he do?
Oh yeah. Right.
Like, what other rapes and murders did he commit?
And what did he do before? Because this is
right.
Like...
You don't just like decide at the age of 20, you're going to rape and murder somebody in their home.
Oh God. Even after Linda was murdered, Joe continued to drive Tim to and from football practice, and he would sometimes ask how the case was going.
Of course he would.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So December 12th, 2019, Joseph Mills is arrested. He was totally calm. He had no response, no emotion. This is going to piss you off. When he's interviewed, he says that he just picked Tim up, but he had never been inside of the house. And then when the detectives tell him that his fingerprints and DNA were found inside, he changed his story and said that Linda invited him in for consensual sex and that the hanger was a sex game that they were playing.
Oh, here we go. The only part that's missing here now is the part where he panicked and disposed of her body in a suitcase in the local dump or something.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. He said that she asked him to tighten the hanger. It was a game. Has this defense ever worked?
Yes.
Fuckers.
Yes, it has. That's why they use it.
Yeah. So detectives believe that after he dropped him off, he returned later that night, snuck into the house while Jeff was still at his grandparents' house and Linda and Tim were at the neighbor's house, which is why the boys never heard a break-in. They believed that he was just hiding in the closet, which is where he got the hanger. That's fucking spooky.
I hate
it too. So he goes to court 40 years after the murder. He decides to take a plea to all charges rather than go to trial, and he was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The brothers are still extremely close, and they also live within miles of each other, and they restore classic cars together.
Oh,
Tim and Jeff, pumpkins. And that is the murder of Linda Slaten. Coach Joe, what the fuck? What the fuck?
I'm serious though. Like, I wonder how often these cases like this that are being solved now, like the police look into the movements of these men between the murder they've pinned on them and the time that they're caught, like, and see if they might be, linked the perpetrator or another. Yeah, exactly. Because it's like, how often does somebody do that like one time and then never again?
Right? No shit.
Like that never happened again?
Oh my God. Fucking piece of shit.
And then there's the whole, like, again, the victims that no one ever talks about, which is like his wife and his kids and his grandkids.
I know.
I can't even imagine.
That was like the guy with the ceramic shop, remember? From here?
Yes.
God.
The gal that was on her bike ride to,
Yeah. I mean, going all those years unknowingly, maybe married to somebody who did this and just raising a family.
And what else did he do?
Yeah.
After that?
Oh, what a piece of shit.
Decades. Just decades. Ugh.
For sure.
Of them not like digging deep enough on men like that.
For sure.
Well, how about a chaos story that's not a palate cleanser?
Oh, okay. Well, sounds great.
It's a double Debbie Downer episode.
Triple D's.
Today.
Triple D's.
It's a triple D. Okay, I am going to tell you about the Beaumont children.
I know this. It sounds familiar. Okay.
Does it? Okay. Do you think you know about? Maybe you've heard this
Sounds
one?
familiar.
Okay. So it was the summer of 1966, and Jane Beaumont was 9 years old, the eldest of 3 children. Her little sister, Arna, was 7, and their little brother, Grant, was 4. The children lived with their parents, Jim and Nancy Beaumont, in Somerton Park, a suburb of Adelaide, Australia. Jim was a former service member and made his living as a taxi driver. Presumably, Nancy was a stay-at-home mom.
Okay.
Adelaide is a city on the southern coast of Australia in the state of South Australia. Somerton Park was very close to the beaches of Adelaide. One beach in particular was a favorite of the Beaumont children, Glenelg Beach. They spent time there often. On the 25th of January, in the midst of a summer heat wave, Jim had driven the 3 children to Glenelg Beach and dropped them off on his way out of town for a 3-day sales trip of some sort in Snowtown. So the next day, the 26th of January, which is Australia Day.
Okay.
Okay. It's a national holiday to celebrate the first permanent European settlement in Australia. And it's very much like American Thanksgiving and about as historically gross as American Thanksgiving. The 3 children asked Nancy that morning if they could go back to Glenelg Beach. Although they did live only 3 kilometers away from the beach, it was entirely too hot to walk there. So Jane, Arna, and Grant took a city bus to the park, which was like all of a 5-minute ride on the bus. The children caught the bus at 8:45 a.m. and Nancy told the children to return on the bus coming back at noon. None of this was unusual. Jane was trusted to take care of her siblings and was very familiar with the bus system in their town.
Okay.
When the noon bus came through and then the 2 p.m. bus came through and the children had not returned, Nancy was getting a little worried. Jim unexpectedly returned home early from his 3-day trip around 3 p.m. When he found out from Nancy that she was worried about the kids and that they hadn't come home, Jim drove down to Glenelg Beach to go retrieve them and bring them home.
Okay.
Jim searched the crowded beach for his 3 children, but couldn't find them anywhere. He returned home to Nancy, and the 2 of them started searching the neighborhood and asking around, friends and kids in the neighborhood if anyone had seen any of the Beaumont children. It was around 5:30 p.m. when they decided it was time to go to the Glenelg police station and report the 3 children missing. Police immediately organized a search for the kids, starting at Glen Elk Beach and the surrounding areas, and began looking for any witnesses to what may have become of the three. The search soon expanded to the sandhills, the ocean, and nearby buildings, while also monitoring the airport, the rail lines, and the interstate roads in the case of an accident or worse, a kidnapping.
Right. Sorry, how old is the oldest kid?
9.
Okay.
Jane is 9. By the evening of the next day, the children were still missing, and the entire nation of Australia knew about the 3 missing Beaumont children. Mm-hmm. By the 29th, the Adelaide Sunday Mail reported on the story with the headline, "Sex Crime Now Feared," which highlighted the public's growing concern that the children had been abducted and murdered by a sex offender.
Was that rooted in any sort of facts or?
No.
Oh, okay.
That was just what everybody was. Mm-hmm. It's like the 80s version of Satanic Panic. It was like, clearly it's a cult. Obviously it's a sex offender who has, raped and murdered the children. Mm-hmm. Even so, the official reward offered at that time for any information leading to the whereabouts of the children was only 250 Australian dollars, which would be about $4,000 today.
Okay.
That same day, the Potawalonga boat haven was drained after a woman told police that she had a conversation with 3 children who resembled the description of the Beaumont kids near the haven at 7 p.m. on the day they disappeared. The area was searched, but nothing was found. Police did find several witnesses who had seen the children, both at the beach and playing at Collie Reserve, a big park area right next to the beach. And they were seen with a man.
Uh-oh.
The man was described as tall, with fair to light brown hair, with a thin face, probably in his 30s. The witnesses at the beach said he was a sun-baked swimmer in a blue Speedo.
Ew. Sir, don't play with children in a Speedo. I mean, what are we doing? God.
At the park, they were seen playing with the man, relaxed, and seemed to be having a good time. This man approached one of the witnesses and asked if anyone had been near the children's belongings. Some of their money was supposedly missing. Then the man went off to change while the children waited for him. The 4 of them were seen walking away from the beach together sometime later. The police estimated that time to be around 12:15 p.m. It was about 2.5 hours later that another witness, Miss Daphne Gregory, reportedly saw the children with the man who she observed carrying an airline bag similar to one that Jane owned. Nancy and Jim described their children as shy, especially Jane. So the notion that they had wandered off in the company of a strange man they didn't know did not track with what they knew of their children. It was especially out of character for them to be playing so confidently with a stranger. Mm-hmm. Police started to consider that the children may have met the man on a previous visit or visits to the beach.
Ooh.
Nancy then recalled that at some point prior to their disappearance, Arna had told her that Jane had, quote, got a boyfriend down the beach.
Gross.
At the time, Nancy assumed Arna was talking about some other kid they had met while playing at the beach. But after the children went missing and reports were coming in about them seen around the area with this strange man, Nancy started to think that maybe this man had been hanging around her kids for a minute.
Oh, God.
A shopkeeper at nearby Wenzel's Bakery on Mosley Street, which was about a block or 2 away from the beach, reported that Jane had bought pasties and a meat pie with a $1 bill. Police considered this further evidence that the Beaumont children had been with another person for 2 reasons. The shopkeeper knew the children well from previous visits and reported that they had never purchased a meat pie before. And Nancy had only given them 6 shillings and 6pence, which was just enough for their bus fare and some lunch, but she did not give them any paper money. Police believed the money had been given to them by somebody else. According to an initial statement, the Beaumont children were seen walking alone at around 2:55 p.m. away from the beach along Jetty Road in the general direction of home. The witness was a postal worker who knew the children well, and he was considered a reliable witness. He said the children were holding hands and laughing in the main street. Police could not determine why these responsible children, already an hour late, were strolling alone and seemingly unconcerned. The postal worker contacted police 2 days after his initial statement and said that he thought he saw them in the morning, not the afternoon as he had previously said. The police did pull together an identikit, as they call it in Australia, or as we would call it here, a police sketch, that was plastered across the news. Hundreds called in claiming to have seen him that day, but nothing came of this.
Is this a full frontal shot with the Speedo or just a face?
I think it's just the face.
God.
It would be several months later, the children still missing, when a woman would come forward with a sighting that occurred the night the Beaumont children disappeared. She said she saw a man with 2 girls and a boy go into a house on her street. I'm not sure if it was like next door or across the street or what, but she thought the house was vacant. She saw the boy later walking alone down the street and the man running after him and grabbing him roughly.
Oh.
The next morning, the house looked empty again and she never saw the man or the 3 children. Police could never determine exactly why this woman did not report this at the time that they had gone missing.
Oh, I hate hearing this. It's like the one little boy that we'll never talk about again because it was so devastating. But all of the people that saw and didn't say anything.
Right.
I hate that.
The Beaumont case attracted international attention. In early 1966, Gerard Croiset, a Dutch psychic, was brought to Australia to assist in the search, which caused a frenzy in the press. But this psychic was not helpful. His story changed day to day and offered no clues. He supposedly identified a spot at a warehouse near the Beaumont home where he believed their bodies had been buried inside the remains of an old brick kiln. The property owners, who were not really interested in excavating based on the claim of a psychic, ended up giving in to public pressure after the publicity of it all helped raise $40,000 to have the building demolished. No remains nor any evidence tied to any members of the Beaumont family was found. Tips continued to come in over the next year, but none of them led to the children or the man that was seen with them. About 2 years after the disappearance, Jim and Nancy received 2 letters. One was supposedly written by Jane and another by a man who said he was keeping the children. The envelope showed a postmark of Dandenong, Victoria. The brief notes described a relatively pleasant existence and referred to, quote, the man who was keeping them. Police believed at the time that the letters could quite likely have been authentic after comparing them with others written by Jane. The letter from the man said that he had appointed himself guardian of the children and was willing to hand them back to their parents and told them of a place to meet him.
Oh, God.
Then Jim and Nancy, followed by a detective, drove to the meeting place, but nobody appeared. Sometime later, a 3rd letter arrived, also supposedly from Jane, saying that the man had realized a disguised detective was near them at the meeting place, and he decided to keep the children because Jim and Nancy had betrayed his trust. And there were no more letters after that.
Was that true? Was there a disguised detective near them?
Yes, they had been followed by a detective.
Okay.
One lead came in that said the Beaumont children were living in the mud islands of Victoria. The entire crew of a British freighter stationed there at the time was questioned in 1968, but this too yielded nothing. There was a woman in Perth who said that for 9 months in 1966, she had lived next door to the children in a desolate railway town between West and South Australia, but no clues were found there either.
What?
Over time, locals in Adelaide started to become suspicious of Nancy, that she had done something to her own children.
This is 3 kids kidnapped together.
3 kids kidnapped together in one day.
This is wild.
It's wild. On the morning of the 26th of August, 1970, 4 years after the Beaumont children went missing, 5-year-old Susan McKay and her 7-year-old sister Judith disappeared from a school bus stop just down the street from their house in the Townsville suburb of Aitkenville in Queensland, Australia, which is quite a ways from Adelaide on that northeastern area of Australia, kind of very near where the island of Dr. Moreau was found. Okay. Another Crime, Wine, and Chaos alum. This was less than 10 minutes after the girls left home to catch their bus.
Wow.
A search for the missing girls was launched after they failed to return home after school and continued until the girls' bodies were found 2 days later on the 28th of August in the dry creek bed about 16 miles southwest of town. Susan was found first, and a trail of footprints from her body led searchers a couple hundred feet away to Judith's body. It was speculated that Judith had tried to run away while Susan was being murdered and had been run down. The postmortem revealed that Susan had been raped, strangled, and stabbed 3 times in the chest, possibly after death. Judith had also been raped and stabbed 3 times in the chest, but the cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation by sand.
But, like, down her throat?
Yes.
Oh my God.
Their school uniforms, straw hats, and shoes were beside them, with each shoe containing a neatly folded sock while their uniforms were folded neatly inside their school bags.
That's creepy. I don't like that.
One witness reported seeing the girls talking to a man in a car at the bus stop at 8:10 a.m. Just after 11 a.m., a car pulled into a gas station about 53 miles south of Townsville, and the driver bought $3 of gas. The station attendant reported seeing 2 girls in the car and said he heard the younger girl asking, "Are we there yet?" followed by the older girl asking the driver, "When are you taking us to Mummy? You promised to take us to Mummy."
Oh.
Not long after, another man, a soldier recently returned from Vietnam, spoke to a driver who had cut him off. The soldier told police that he saw 2 girls in Aitkenvale school uniforms in the vehicle and that the driver appeared to be trying to avoid being seen. The cops rejected these witnesses' statements because these 2 had identified the car as a Vauxhall, while all the other witnesses who saw a car in and around the area of the crime scene identified a car that looked like a Holden. So neither of these men who had actually seen the girls in the car with this man were questioned in depth.
God, fucking stupid.
The police focused on finding this car rather than the man, as it was also reported that one of the doors was a different color than the rest of the car, and probably because of this, they thought they would have an easier time finding the car rather than the man, so they didn't release a sketch of the suspect.
Oh my God.
The Townsville community was outraged by these murders. Police initially didn't post any kind of reward, but after interviewing over 6,000 men who lived in the area and having no progress at all, they finally put up a $10,000 reward with an offer for a pardon for any accomplice that came forward.
Okay.
And then the case went cold. In 1973, 7 years after the Beaumont children went missing and 3 years after the murder of the McKay sisters, on August 25th at the Adelaide Oval, a sports arena in the center of the city, was packed for the Aussie rules football match between Norwood and North Adelaide. This is some kind of strange version of football that is played on an oval field, often a modified cricket ground, with a ball that looks a whole lot like an American football and involves kicking, but also holding and running with the ball. It's all very strange. It's Aussie rules football. Like, it's literally like, it's a whole version of football that only happens in Australia.
Weird. Okay. All right.
Okay. Anyway, big game, packed stadium. 11-year-old Joanne Ratcliffe was in attendance with her parents, Les and Kathleen, her older brother, and a family friend named Frank. And they were also with 4-year-old Kirsta Gordon and Kirsta's grandmother, who was caring for her while her parents, Greg and Christine, were out of town visiting friends with their younger daughter. Joanne's family had been to the Oval dozens of times to watch games, and Joanne knew her way around the grounds. She got bored and started chatting with little Kirsta, who then asked to go to the bathroom. Joanne volunteered to take her. Joanne's parents had a rule. Joanne could go to the bathroom while the game was being played, but not during the last quarter or any of the breaks. The 2 girls headed off together early in the game and again during the 3rd quarter around 3:35 p.m. But the second time, they didn't come back. After about 15 minutes, Les and Kathleen went off looking for the girls, but couldn't find them. It was around 5 p.m., an hour later, after the game ended, that they were able to get an announcement made on the Oval's PA system. The 2 girls were reported missing to the police at 5:12 p.m.
I can't imagine that kind of panic, especially at a stadium.
At a sporting event with thousands of people?
It's a needle in a haystack.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, my God.
The two girls were sighted several times in the hour and a half after leaving to go to the bathroom. One witness spotted the two girls with a man behind the grandstand trying to coax a kitten out from under a car. A boy who was selling drinks and candy saw a man come from behind a tree and scoop up the younger girl with one arm and carry her towards the southern gates, while Joanne followed frantically behind. Later, that boy would identify Joanne from a selection of photographs. He said she was kicking the man in the shins and pulling at his jacket, and he was yelling at her angrily to clear off before he grabbed her arm and led both the girls out of the gates.
Wow.
Everyone who saw them at the Oval just assumed it was a parent with his children and didn't think too much of it.
Oh, my God. Oh.
90 minutes later, a motorist saw the man and the girls about 3 kilometers past the Oval on a bridge near the Adelaide Zoo. Joanne was visibly distressed, and the motorist pulled over, but then he thought twice about it and decided not to interfere. This was the last reported sighting of the 2 girls and the man. A police sketch of this man went out to the public. It was a skinny-faced man around the age of 40 wearing a brimmed hat and tweed jacket, and he looked eerily similar to the man in the sketch that was seen with the Beaumont children.
Oh, my God. I just got chills.
Despite searches, a $5,000 reward, and widespread media attention, the kidnapping very quickly became a cold case. In 1992, new forensic examinations of the letters that Nancy and Jim Beaumont had received showed they were a hoax. Fingerprint technology had improved, and the author was identified as a 41-year-old man who had been a teenager at the time and had written the letters as a joke.
I fucking hate that people do this.
Because of the time that he had elapsed, he was not charged with anything.
That's not a joke.
No, it's not
Awful.
a joke. It's not funny. No. In 1996, the building identified by the Dutch psychic who claimed that the Beaumont children were buried there was undergoing partial demolition, and the owners allowed for a full search of the site, and once again, no trace was found of the Beaumont children. And then in 1998, Crime Stoppers ran a segment about the McKay murders, the 2 sisters.
Yeah.
And a woman called in to report that she suspected her cousin's husband may have been the man that murdered those sisters.
Whoa.
The detective who was working it as a cold case called her back a few days later and found her suspicions had enough merit for them to dig deeper into this man. The man in question was Arthur Stanley Brown, and he was a very bad man. He likely killed his first wife. Many extended family members suspected that he had. Brown married Hester in 1944 and became stepfather to her 3 children while also having an affair with Hester's sister Charlotte.
Jeez.
Hester died in 1978 from a fall that many people suspected was not a fall or an accident at all. Hester had caught Brown molesting a child and told her older sister Millie that she made sure he was never alone with her children. And those suspicious of Brown believed he killed Hester to keep her from going to the police.
Right.
Brown married Charlotte after Hester died, who brought her 5 children with her to live with him.
God.
In 1982, another one of Hester's sisters told their parents that Brown had molested her when she was a small girl. And after this confession she made to her parents, a bunch more of her extended family came forward to say they had also been molested by Brown and had been shown pictures by Brown of dead women in a secret room in his home.
Oh my God. This guy is awful.
But after seeking legal advice, they were told taking the matter to court would be traumatic for the victims, and it all became an open family secret.
Whoa.
As the police continued to question friends and relatives of Brown, more and more evidence accumulated. Brown was a very strange man, meticulously neat to a fault. His shirts were immaculately pressed, and he had an odd habit of folding garbage into neat squares before disposing of it, which eerily echoed the neatly folded clothes of the McKay sisters. Brown had been working as a carpenter at the school where the McKay sisters attended at the time of their murders. He had been obsessed with the case, going so far as to lie and claim he knew their father. He also offered to take 2 of his wife's cousins to view the crime scene 2 weeks after the murders.
Why the hell would you want to go view the crime scene? Oh, I don't like this guy.
He owned a Vauxhall with one odd-colored door that he buried, later dug up, then took to the dump, telling his family he did all this because he didn't want anyone interviewing or annoying him.
This is not looking good.
Brown took many of his molestation victims to Antill Creek to be molested, and in one of those trips, they were like 20 meters away from where the McKay sisters' bodies were found.
Oh, my God.
Then there were two separate men who claimed Brown had confessed to them at different times to murdering the sisters. One was a random dude at a bar who didn't even know Brown about a month after the murders, and Brown asked him if he had been following the murder case and told the man that the police were looking for the wrong car and that he had committed the murder. This rando actually reported this to the police at the time, who dismissed this report after speaking with Artie Brown.
Oh, we asked him. He said no.
Mm-hmm.
Oh.
It reminds me of the cop that went and talked to Gary Ridgway while he was out working on his yard.
Uh-huh.
Oh, Gary? No.
Uh-huh. Oh, my God.
And then 5 years later, in 1975, Brown confessed to his apprentice, who said he never came forward because it seemed so out of character for Brown and he thought Brown was joking.
Oh, that's funny.
Isn't that hilarious?
That's not how jokes work.
I joke about that kind of shit all the time.
Samesies. I like to get a good laugh out of people.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
After months of investigating, Brown was arrested and charged with 45 counts relating to pedophilia and the rape and murder of the McKay sisters, although that was all based on circumstantial evidence. A woman named Sue Laurie was watching the news about the arrest being made in the McKay murders and sat up with a start. The man on the television charged with murdering the two sisters was the same man she had seen all those years ago that she thought was a grandfather who was being hit by a distressed young girl as he steered two children out of Adelaide Oval.
Oh, my God.
Photos taken of Brown in the 70s and in his later life look shockingly similar to the police sketches from the Adelaide Oval kidnapping. His appearance remained consistent throughout his adult life, giving witness sightings from decades ago a vivid quality.
Wow.
So not only did police make him the prime suspect in the disappearance of Kirsta and Joanne, but this means he also resembled the man in the police sketch from the disappearance of the Beaumont children. Mm-hmm. Police tried to find a connection between Brown and the Beaumonts, but were unsuccessful. No employment records existed that could shed light on his work history, such as showing holidays when he may have traveled down to Adelaide.
Right.
There was another child disappearance in Queensland in 1972, Marilyn Joy Wallman, where witnesses saw a blue Vauxhall in the area around the time she went missing, and Brown's travel itinerary at the time meant he very well could have been there and been the kidnapper. Mm-hmm. In 1975, Catherine Pamela Graham was murdered, her battered body found 500 meters from where the McKay sisters' bodies had been found, the day after she had been selling books door to door in the neighborhood where Brown lived. And while police at the time said they had evidence that two men were involved, they did admit the disposal was very similar to that of the McKay sisters and that there were other similarities not released to the public. The court proceedings of Brown for the murders of the McKay sisters began on the 18th of October in 1999. In a hearing prior to trial, all the evidence of pedophilia had been submitted but ruled prejudicial and could not be put before the jury.
What?
The jury was unable to reach a decision based solely on the circumstantial evidence, strong as it was. In July of 2000, Brown's defense argued that he was unfit to plead, and the trial got pushed out a week. It would be a year later, in July of 2001, that the court released the information that Brown had applied for a Section 613 verdict, meaning Brown was considered unfit to be tried. The jury rejected this application, but his wife had referred his case to the Queensland Mental Health Tribunal, who ruled that Brown had progressive dementia and was suffering from Alzheimer's and thus unfit to stand trial.
Oh, my God.
The Attorney General lodged an appeal, and the court decided the tribunal did not have jurisdiction to overrule the jury and called for an independent psych eval. And it was in July of 2001 that the report concluded Brown was not fit to stand trial because of the dementia and the Alzheimer's.
Right.
The prosecutor's office could have chosen to move forward with the case anyway, but chose not to, and all charges against Brown were dropped.
God.
Brown's wife, Charlotte, died in April of 2002, and because Brown had no family left to support him, he moved into a nursing home and died 3 months later on the 6th of July at the age of 90, officially an innocent man.
Wow. That's a damn fucking shame.
The McKay case was officially closed. The police were satisfied that Brown was the killer, but the rest of these cases remain open and unsolved. His own family believes he may have been responsible for at least 9 murders.
Oh my God.
But not everyone agrees that Arthur Stanley Brown was the man on the beach that day in January 1966, partly because he would have been 53 at the time of the disappearance, and all witness accounts of the man seen in the Speedo with Jane, Arna, and Grant describe him as being in his 30s. There were other suspects through the decades. Bevan Spencer von Einem received a life sentence for the murder of a teen boy in Adelaide, and while investigating von Einem for that murder, an informant, known only as Mr. B, told a very detailed story about von Einem confessing to him about kidnapping and murdering the Beaumont children. Police had not originally considered him for the kidnapping of the 3 children, but he did resemble the sketch of the man on the beach seen with the Beaumonts. Mr. B also claimed that von Einem had implicated himself in the Adelaide Oval abductions. Police were not all in consensus that this could be their guy, though. While there were enough plausible details to justify further investigation, not all of them lined up with the known facts of the Beaumont case.
Right.
Some of the details Mr. B relayed to investigators did correspond to reports on several of von Einem's alleged murder victims, but von Einem was younger than the man reportedly seen on the beach with the children. He was in his early 20s. And his typical victim profile was boys and young men, either in their teens or early 20s, much older than the Beaumont children.
Right.
There was another convicted murderer, James O'Neill, who murdered a 9-year-old boy in Tasmania and was suspected by a former detective who had spent 3 years speaking to O'Neill to gain his confidence before filming O'Neill for an ABC documentary titled The Fisherman. The film attempted to link O'Neill to the Beaumont case. This retired detective said that although there was no evidence to link O'Neill to the Beaumont case, he was persuaded that O'Neill was to blame, stating, quote, "I asked him about the Beaumonts and he said, I couldn't have done it. I was in Melbourne at the time. That's not a denial," end quote. Later asked again if he had murdered the children, O'Neill's response was, quote, "Look, on legal advice, I am not going to say where I was or when I was there."
Okay.
So although O'Neill claims to have never visited Adelaide, his work in the opal industry at the time required that he frequently visit Coober Pedy, which would have required him to pass through Adelaide. The former detective also suspected O'Neill was involved in the Adelaide Oval case. However, the South Australia police have interviewed O'Neill and discounted him as a suspect in the Beaumont case, possibly for similar reasons that von Einem was not pursued. O'Neill would have been 19 years old when the Beaumonts went missing.
And also, okay, so there was the one lady that swore that Brown was the person that she saw at the stadium carrying the kids out.
Yes.
But did anybody speak to whether or not Brown looked very young at 50, that possibly he could be mistaken for 30?
I was thinking that. Nobody mentioned that in any of the articles I read. Nobody talked about that. But I was thinking the same thing. Like maybe he could have looked really young for his age. Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe. Then there was Alan Anthony Monroe. Alan McIntyre, who had known Monroe and had himself been investigated and cleared by police of involvement in the Beaumont case, he told police that Monroe had come to his house in 1966 with the Beaumont children's bodies in the trunk of his car.
Oh.
McIntyre's children said that they and their father had initially mistook Arna's body for that of a boy because of her short haircut. In 2015, Monroe was being sought in Southeast Asia in connection with child abuse incidents there. Monroe was a former scoutmaster who had pleaded guilty to 10 child sex offenses dating back to 1962. For these crimes, he was sentenced to 10 years with a non-parole period of 5 years, 5 months, making him eligible for release in 2022. In June of 2017, Adelaide police detectives were given a copy of a child's diary written in 1966, which allegedly placed Monroe in the vicinity of Glenelg Beach at the time of the Beaumont disappearance. He was convicted of abusing several children, including one of McIntyre's sons, who was a contributor to the diary. Monroe had been previously investigated by police, but no evidence had been found that he was involved in the Beaumont case, and he died in 2017.
My God.
In a 2013 book about the Beaumont case that was titled The Slaten Man, Uncovering the Mystery of the Missing Beaumont Children, and this book did not name the identity of the Slaten Man, but Hayden Phipps did name the man soon after publication. He claimed the Slaten Man was his estranged father, Harry Phipps, who had died in 2004. Phipps looked a lot like the man seen talking to the Beaumont children at Glen Elk Beach. He was wealthy and known to be in the habit of giving out dollar bills, and was later alleged to have been a pedophile and lived only 300 meters away from the beach.
Whoa.
Hayden, who was 15 at the time of the disappearance, came forward to researchers in 2007 with the claim that he had seen the Beaumont children in his father's yard on the 26th of January. 2 other young witnesses at the time said that they had been paid by Phipps to dig a hole in his factory yard that weekend for reasons unknown. In November of 2013, a 1 meter square section of a factory in North Plimpton, which had been owned by Harry Phipps, was excavated. A ground-penetrating radar found one small anomaly which can indicate movement or objects within the soil, but the dig found no additional evidence and investigations into the site were closed. In January of 2018, Adelaide detectives announced that they would return to the factory site and conduct further excavations after a private investigation sponsored by Channel 7 in Adelaide. The excavation took 9 hours. Animal bones and garbage was found, but nothing related to the Beaumont case.
My God.
The Beaumont case was one of the largest police investigations in Australian history and remains one of the country's most infamous cold cases. In 2018, the Premier of South Australia said that the South Australia police have never given up on the case and have a policy that no murder investigation ends up in a closed file. The state government continues to maintain a $1 million reward for information relating to the Beaumont children's disappearance. The kidnapping is also credited by many social commentators as a significant event in the evolution of Australian society, with a large number of people changing the way they supervised their children after that. And while at the time no one blamed Nancy and Jim for neglecting their children because they weren't doing anything differently than anyone else was doing, it did mark what some refer to as an end of innocence in Australian life.
Yeah.
The regular and widespread attention given to this case, its significance in Australian criminal history, and the fact that it remains an unsolved mystery means that over half a century later, new leads and clues are still reported on by the media, and the story continues to be revisited often. Nancy and Jim Beaumont eventually moved from the home where they had been raising their 3 children before they disappeared. The 2 divorced and decided to live their final years away from public attention, but they never stopped cooperating with the police in the search for their children. Both passed away, Nancy in September of 2019 at the age of 92, and Jim in April of 2023 at the age of 97, without ever knowing what happened to their 3 children.
Oh my God. Fuck, sister. That was heavy. All of your kids. All of them.
All 3.
Yes. I can't imagine that.
It's insane. It is wild.
All 3 of them. That's terrible.
Followed some man like the Pied fucking Piper.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And all the web around it and all the different possibilities. And then there's that brown guy and like, it's crazy. It's crazy.
God.
And all I can think is there's no way one man did all of that. So, that means that there's like a bunch of like light-haired, skinny white dudes out there. Again, this is FBI profilers like that. There's your profile, guys. Mm-hmm. There's your pedophiles and your child murderers. Mm-hmm. There you go. Those are the guys to be afraid of.
Yeah. That's awful. Oh, that poor family.
Yeah.
That was a fucking bummer, sister.
Sorry.
If you guys,
but now we know about the most infamous case in Australia.
There it is.
In case anyone didn't know that one, now we know.
Now we know.
If
you want more bummers, sign up for our Patreon and get some more bummer episodes, bonus episodes.
100%.
Honey P.
What
else?
Oh, sister, I don't know. Go and give us a review on Apple Podcasts because you can type one up. You can actually write a thing.
Yeah.
But wherever you listen to us, make sure you rate it because, we get the more ratings that come in, the, better chances are that people will find us.
Right.
So
that's right.
Yeah. Sister, I love you
Love
so
you
much.
so much.
This was so fucking
So fucking
chaotic.
chaotic. Goodbye.
Bye.
Crime, Wine, and Chaos is produced by 8th Direction Records. Artwork by Joshua M. Davis. Music by Paul Abner. If you would like to support the show, you can visit our Patreon page at crimewineandchaos.com/Patreon. Cheers!
Everything's lagging over here.
I look extra freckly.